Okay, moving on. Going to the next pages. This part talks about the clutch and the clutch bell and all that stuff for the nitro, so we're going to skip through that. We're not doing that, we're doing an electric. Next part, I'm just going to find the 10mm cap screws here so I can put in the anti-rotation bracket right here. Make sure you clean them off. Don't put thread lock on them. You're going into plastic. I put a little bit of CA on mine. You can do that on yours if you want to. So we're going to put that on here, making sure it fits in the way it's supposed to. The little L shape, the L goes forward, as you can see. And once we've got it on here, let's see how it's set up. Screwed on there. There's a little indent here. Put it on the indent and make sure it's lined up first. Sand away some of it if you have to, and then screw the screws in there. When you're going into plastic, don't over torque it. You can just crack it and make it more brittle. Once it's in there and it's pretty solid, just leave it the way it is. Otherwise, you're just going to keep, killing the thread. Just a little bit is nice and solid. You don't want to kill it too much. Once you've got the anti-rotation bracket on there, and make sure you've used the correct size screws, next part we're going to get everything together for these little aileron arms. I'm going to put this together, and it's just very similar to what we did here on the tail. It's got a little spacer sleeve on the inside, bearings on the outside, and we're going to make sure we've got the ball links lined up the way it's supposed to. Looking at these things, they look like they're symmetrically identical all the way around, but there is one side that has kind of little hole or little circles in them. So the way the drawing looks, it looks like there are no circles here, so I'm going to make sure that the circles are kind of like on the inside. So by that I mean one ball is going to go on the side, on the front where the circles are. The other two balls are going to come out here where there are no circles in the plastic moldings here. And again, we're screwing into plastic, so no need to use thread lock, but feel free to use some CA if you want to. I'm going to use a little CA. So just make sure you get out these two little aileron arms, the four bearings, the two little shaft spacers here, and the ball links with the screws, and of course some CA, if you're going to screw that on here. So we're going to follow the directions. We're going to build these things and get them ready to go, and then we'll come back, review, and then move on to the next step up here. Okay, now that we've got the aileron mixing arms all set to go, we've got the bearings, make sure spacer's in there. It's going to have the ball links on this side, two of them here, and then one of them facing the opposite direction. Two of them that are going to be identical. For the next step here, everything that it looks like we're going to need, have these things ready to go. There's going to be a grommet here, and you're going to want to use a small amount of CA to put it in this little hole just to hold it in place. Some M3 lock nuts, these little nuts that have the plastic in them already, and because of the plastic you don't need to use thread lock to get them to hold in place. There's going to be a long 22mm cap screw, which is going to go through here, and there's also this little grommet spacer, and it's got little nubs on the end. Instead of using washers, it kind of takes care of itself. So you want those little grommet, the long screws, and you're going to put them in here like so. It's going to go with the long screw in here in the mixing arm, and then the fat end of this spacer is going to face towards the frame, and the little part that has the nub, it's kind of great, like instead of using a washer you've got this nub for the clearance from the bearing, and then you're going to put it in like that into the frame, and then you're going to put this M3 nut on the end of it, and then you're just going to put the rear canopy mount parts on the end just the same with the M3 nut. and we're just going to put it on the part of the frame that we've built so far. We'll get back and do the other side of the frame later when we start building that one and getting it all together. So I'll come back and show you what it's like. Make sure you use some CA here. Don't use any thread lock on this part. It's not necessary. Okay, after that part, had to hold on to this side pretty well, tighten this side. Over here, same thing, clamp down with some needle nose pliers, and then tighten it. Make sure you know you've got it on the outside. These are going to face forward right here, and make sure this is nice and loose the way it's supposed to be. That's done. After that, what we're going to do is put the little plastic mounts for the servos on here. So it's going to go on there basically like so, long parts facing towards the inside. So what you do is line up the hole here. We've got these little 2x6 screws. Put it just in the screw here on the top. Don't use any thread lock or anything. Do that. Screw it in there all the way, hold that into place. Same thing here, and then you're going to do the same thing on the other frame. So that's going to get ready for those little mounts to hold those in. And like it says down here, don't over tighten it when you're going into plastic. Okay, next, since I still had stuff left from bag step 1, I ended up putting the second frame back together, sort of. I just, same thing, put the servo mounts here on this, ready to go. Put the aileron arm on there, and the little canopy standoff here. So that's all set. We've got the two frames together, and now we can start moving on to step 2. Okay, for the next step, we're going to find these motor mounts in the kit, and some hex bolts and some screws, so that we can mount these little frame braces. And there's a bunch of different configurations that you can go for. What we're going to do is electric, and I'm going to set it up for a more aggressive maneuver. So what it says over here, upper frame position for aggressive 3D electric configuration. So I'm going to use the holes the way it describes, set up the frame just the way it is, and then make sure I use this spot. And then we've got these other spots to put it down here. This is a standard configuration for beginner sport kind of stuff, not used in the electric but for the nitro. This can be to support the battery tray in the electric configuration, or additional support for a nitro configuration. I'm going to use this as my second mounting position. This rear frame brace, that's a nitro configuration, not used in electric. So the two configurations I'm going to use is this one and this one with the frame braces that I have. You can also go online, buy extra frame braces, and use all the different spots. That's what's so great about this. You can kind of choose how rigid you want. If you want to add a few extra pounds and you want a little more rigid of a frame, you can add on more of these. So I'm just going to use those two, and I'm going to get this ready and put these on the frame and come back and we'll look at it when that part is done. We just make sure, as it says in here, we want to get the hex spacers in place. We want to make sure we use the 3x8 screws, and we clean it off. We're screwing metal into metal here, so we want to make sure that we use blue thread lock when we're getting them in there. So I'll come back and we'll look at what the setup is looking like once we get these frame braces on here. Okay, in my kit it has it's got this new recommended battery tray location. So I'm going to set up the battery tray slider so that we can put it in the frame this way. So to set it up, some of these hex bolts, you'll notice, have little screws in the hole, or little holes on the side of them. So we're going to put two of them in the top of this one. Not the outer holes, but the inner holes. You come in just a little bit. There's also one here and one here. We'll put them on the outer parts here. We're going to go on to step 2, which is the front right here, and we're going to open that bag and get that set up, and we'll try to integrate putting this in the frame at the same time. Also, what I did, I put these little frame brackets in here as I said I was going to. This one right here at the bottom seems like a good place for this. If we need to put it somewhere else, or if we can put it somewhere else to add support to this, I might do that. This one right here, the recommendation for the Electric Extreme 3D, what I had to do is, for the arm here, the aileron arm, I had to pull the little M3 threaded lock nut to get it out, and then just screwed this into the metal hex right here. It still moves freely. It went in there pretty nice. If you have to pull it out, make sure you do thread lock. You didn't need thread lock to put it into the nut, but you do to put it into the hex. Make sure that this is moving nice and clean, and we've got all of the frame brackets, and this is all set to go. Okay, we've got our two frame halves basically ready to go. So what we're going to do now is just put the two frame halves together. Same thing, clean off the screws with alcohol, put thread lock on them. For here, we're going to take this M3 nut off here, and it's going to screw into this part of the frame because we're doing the Electric 3D setup. Put the two halves together. Make sure you follow the manual, and then we'll come back and look at it. There's also the next part that we're going to put the all the receiver and the tray mount in the front part of the helicopter on here. Most of what happens in the manual next is about just nitro stuff. So basically we're just going to skip through that because we're not doing nitro, and then just put the two frame halves together, and then we'll come here to the elevator arm, setting that guy up once we get the two frame halves together. Okay, now we've got the two frame halves together. The aileron arms are moving smoothly. Again, the two aileron arms are going into this frame brace that we've put in here, the bottom part with the configuration that we've put it in. All three of the bearing blocks are in. I haven't screwed them completely tight. I've put some thread lock in there, but you know, once we get the main shaft through and make sure it's moving nice and smooth, then we're going to start tightening around there. So we got this all together. Next thing we're going to do is get this aileron arm prepared and ready to go. And as you can see in the picture here in the manual, like with the right angle, see where this little gap with this material being filled, make sure that the ball links are facing all the correct ways. Just hold it the way it is in the manual and then put the ball links on there. I put a little bit of CA on those, and what you're going to have to do to put them in there is first you're going to put the a 3x8 nut on here with a washer, and then you're going to slide it through here, let's see, from the back into where these little bearings are, and then you're going to put this in here with, let's see, you're going to want this big part where the big huge hole for the grub screw is going to be facing the right, and the big long arm is facing towards the rear. So it's going to go in there like that. Once we're in there, we have this tiny little 10 millimeter 2x10 millimeter screw, and as you can see, when we line this part up in here, there's the flat spot that's on this that you can line up with the grub screw, but there's also a little hole right here. If you can see it, you line up the hole so that you can see through that, and then you put the little grub screw through. You don't put thread lock on that part, you just put that little 10 millimeter screw in, no thread lock, but you do put thread lock on the grub screw, and make sure it's on there in the right spot. So we're going to slide it through first, make sure it's on in the inside, and then make sure we follow the directions to have it facing the correct direction, and then put the 10 millimeter screw in there, and then put the grub screw in there. Make sure you've got the M3 washer and the 3x8 cap screw when you put it in there. So we'll come back and show you once we've got the full elevator arm on here completely.